Hello everybody, welcome back to Hunt Creative. Today we're going to be making table-worthy stalagmite monsters, or ropers, from miniatures from dollar store craft materials. I got some black cardboard, a circular punch, some circular wooden discs, some toothpicks. I've got a little bit of water mixed with craft glue, half and half, a toothpick in there for stirring. I got some extra water, a squirt bottle with water, and some paper towels or kitchen paper. Let's dive right in. First thing we're going to do is we're going to make mouth armatures for our miniatures. I'm cutting little black circles from the card paper, and then I'm going to snip off the pointy bits of a whole bunch of these toothpicks to become the fangs for our stalagmite monsters. Just digging in and snipping them off one by one. I'm going to need a lot of them, so just going to pile through them here. I've accelerated the video for you so that we can get through this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the circular black paper discs in half. And I'm going to use my hot glue gun to glue these pointy bits in to represent the fangs, and then that's going to form kind of like a little Venus flytrap mechanism thing where the fangs interlock as the disc opens and closes. And when I attach that to the mini, it's going to form the mouth cavity for the roper. Getting little snips going, and I'm just clipping off those pointy bits like a crazy person. A few more to go. And here I'm folding those poster board discs in half to make my mouth cavities. The black paper is going to give the illusion of depth. When I paint up the fangs kind of a bony color, they're going to look a lot like mouths. Hot glue will look like the gums in which the fangs are embedded. Just take my time and do them a little bit. Pardon my hair and my glasses. A few more pointy teeth for this stalagmite monster. And I'll do the other side of the jaw. And what I'm doing here is I'm aligning the pointy bits so that they don't line up perfectly and the uppers and lowers kind of interlock. It's going to look fierce and ferocious when it's finished. And I'm not being too fussy about it. I mean, a few missing fangs seems like the life of a stalagmite monster to me anyway. I've made several of them. And here you can see how the lowers interlock with the uppers. Just kind of a random number of fangs, whatever I thought would look good. And now we're going to move on to the next step where we make the cones for the ropers, the stalagmite cones. And what I'm doing here is I'm moistening paper towels with my spray bottle full of water, and then I'm rolling them up. I'm using a little bit of hot glue to fasten the ragged edges in so that they're not moving around. Hat tip to DM Scotty from DM's Craft. I learned this method from watching his videos, and it works really well. He uses half and half glue water soaking these paper towels, and that takes forever to dry. I am mixing his technique with a little bit of hot glue to snag those loose edges right during the build process. What I'm doing here is I'm slicing partway through the cone that I've made so that I can insert one of my mouth armatures and form the maw of the stalagmite monster. I'm going to wrap a little more paper towel around there to beef up the bottom section and widen the cone where it should realistically be its thickest, down at the bottom. Hot glue to keep that from unraveling and unrolling. A little bit more hot glue to tighten up the coil at the top of the cone. And I'm just slicing the bottom flattish so that when I glue it to those wooden discs for the bases, it'll sit nicely. And what I got here is I've got squares of toilet tissue, which is a little more pliable and a little less textured than the paper towel I used earlier. And what I'm doing with this is I'm just smoothing out the transitions between one layer and the next on the cone, and it gives me a little bit more control to kind of model it into a texture and a shape that I like. Also a DM Scotty technique. I've decided this one is going to have two little peaks at the top. There's my half and half glue and water mixture, and I'm just drizzling it over the top of this with an old paintbrush that I will wash thoroughly. Just a dollar store paintbrush. What it's going to do is it's going to help lock in the texturing and the sculpting that I've done with my moistened papers. And this is kind of a rough idea of what it's going to look like. It's looking good. I made 3 others because if I'm going to make one, I might as well make several. And each one of them is a little bit different just due to the nature of the sculpting and how they go together, and I'm okay with that. I think a little bit of variety is nice on the table. Now I'm going to let them dry overnight. I don't want to touch them again until that glue and water is dried. And now I'm using just plain coated paper clips to make tentacles for them. I'm unraveling the paper clips and then I'm twisting them up into tentacle-like shapes. And here I'm just gathering the ones that I've already made together with the models that I have, because I want to make sure that I make enough, but I don't want to make too many. In fact, I ended up with fewer than 6 per model, but that's okay. I think that we can use a little bit of theater of the mind to make that work out. Got some pliers going so that I can make gradual twists and bends. And I'll just keep going until I figure I've got enough. Got these paper clips at the dollar store. I have lots left. And here I've coated them in black paint and Mod Podge because I wanted a little harder shell on the outside. And I'm just using a cordless drill here to drill some holes in that shell, and I'm going to insert the tail end of the paper clips coated with hot glue into these holes, and that will be the tentacles of the roper or the Stalagmite Monster. And I've bent them in such a way that they will actually hold miniatures up off the ground, like figure miniatures or character miniatures. And here what I'm doing is I'm just coating the end of the paperclip that goes inside those holes with hot glue, and then I'm kind of reinforcing it with some sculpted hot glue drizzled around the outside and drizzled partway up the paperclip itself so that they're firmly held in place, and during play they won't pop out or detach. And here you can see I've got some of them already made up and coated with black, and I've got the tentacles coated with black and Mod Podge. Little extra hot glue extrusions on the outside of some of them to represent the fungal growths that they might encounter underground. And I'll paint those up to represent that fungus. Just wait for that to dry a little bit. And this one I've attached 2 mushrooms to the top of because it goes along with the underground theme of my Grim Grotto. I've made some mushroom scatter terrain and some micated mushroom folk, and this guy has some similar mushroom-like growths on top of him. And now what I'm doing is I'm just coating the bases where I sculpted that hot glue with some craft glue, Then I'm pouring over some gravel, fish tank gravel, kind of a fine texture. That'll cover up that smoother hot glue at the base where the tentacles are. It'll look great when I paint them up. And I'll just take a few minutes and do each one of them. One more to go. Last one, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. There we go. This is kind of what they look like. And here I am, I'm just sponging on some deeper gray as a start. You can see that I've cut a little slit just above the mouth, and I've glued in a little plastic pearl bead that I got at the dollar store as well. Now that's going to be the eyeball a little bit later. So what I'm doing here is I'm just sponge painting on dark, medium gray and a little bit of a tan color to give a little bit of variety of color. Using some sea sponges that I also got at the dollar store. It's looking good. I'm trying not to get any on those mushroom caps because I want them to be bright and shiny at the end, and I'm also trying not to get any on those pearl beads or the extruded fungal growths. But I'm looking for good coverage, and I want the models to look like they're ready for the next step. Letting chaos help a little bit here with the texturing of the sculpted papers and whatnot. And there's my tan color. A little bit of variety of tan adds to the verisimilitude or the natural appearance of the stone. Not every stone is gray. Some stones have a little bit of extra stuff in them. Geologists like feldspar as much as granite. Well, actually feldspar is in granite. Some granites. Almost ready for the next step. So now we're getting colorful. I'm going to paint out the teeth with kind of ivories and tans. And then I'm going to use kind of a gray pink color for the tentacles, and then a bright pink color for the upper 2/3 of the tentacles, and then bright red for the last third of the tentacles. And that's going to give us a little bit of graduated color variation and add some visual interest to those tentacles. And after I get them all finished painted and coated with Mod Podge, I'm going to hit them with my clear craft glue, which leaves a nice shiny sparkly surface. And that's going to make them kind of look moist and gross. I'm going to do that for the eyeballs as well. Sorry for the off-screen work here. Really just adding that gray pink around the gums and the mouth parts and on the tentacles. Kind of a complex shape to paint, so I'm just kind of slathering it on roughly, trying to get about 99% coverage with this color. And then my further colors will help cover up any gaps that I might have missed. Slapping paint around, listening to some tunes, streaming some YouTube. Credit to Jeremy from Black Magic for the Mod Podge and black paint. Credit to DM Scotty for the paper towel, kitchen paper, toilet paper sculpting of the stalagmites. And credit to all my other favorite crafters for sculpting hot glue into new and interesting ways. If you like these videos and you get a lot of use out of them or would like to try the project, feel free to like and subscribe. That helps grow the channel helps reach more people and allows me to continue to make these videos. More paint work to go on this guy, and then we'll move on to the last model. Picked up those little plastic shot glasses at the dollar store as well. Trying to keep things as economical as possible in these times, and seems to be working out pretty well. I'm getting a lot of mileage out of my dollar store craft paints if I only use them a drop at a time. I need to be a little less generous with the initial squirt. You can see my palette's getting quite thick with unused paint. And I do add water to the paint to thin it down where I like it. I'm adding some more of the hotter pink color to the upper 2/3 of the tentacles. This step doesn't take too long. Helps cover any gaps I might have missed on the first pass. One more to go with this color, and then I'm moving on to the red. I'm not even cleaning my brush. Just right into one corner of the red puddle. And just the top ends of the tentacles, just the very tips of them. There we go. Now I'm working on the fungal growths and the eyes, just the details. I'm going to paint them up in bright colors because I want to. Toadstools are bright colors, some fungal growths are bright colors. If these ropers end up in an underdark setting, then the turquoises and the pinks and whatnot will kind of play off any similarly colored landscape scatter that I create. And again, these extra details, not necessary, but they do give me opportunities to create stories around them for my players. What if they have to fight a roper that has sporing fungus growing out of it that causes some kind of unforeseen effect? Here I'm painting the eyeballs, and I'm going to paint them all a little bit differently. One is going to get a red eye, one's going to get an orange eye, one's going to get a yellow eye, and one's going to get a light turquoise eye. And that's okay. It'll help me visually discern them on the table, and again gives me a chance to write stories about them if I want to use that feature as part of the story. And it's fun. And in a mostly gray model, a little bit of color pop is not a bad deal. And I'm going to lighten the stems of those mushrooms at the top with kind of a cream off-white color, same color I used on the fangs. The underside of the mushroom caps. Same way I painted my mushroom scatter and my mushroom folk. I hit those fangs again just to smooth out the color a little bit and add some contrast against the gray-brown stone and the blackened mouth. Again, I'm not being too terribly fussy. I'm going to hit these with a wash later, and I'll re-highlight the teeth after that. But I do want them to definitely read as fangs while on the table. Last one, and then we'll be able to move on to the next step. Clean my brush off a little bit. And here I'm using watered down black and Mod Podge to form a bit of a wash, and I'm just tidying up the eyeball sockets and making sure that they have a little bit of depth of read on the model. And I'm going to use it to line out the slit or the slot that I made for the eyeball and draw a slot pupil on the bottom 2/3 of that eyeball so it reads like it's looking at whatever it's attacking. And I'll do this for all 4 of the models. So the yellow eyeball reads a little brighter than the red eyeball. Shroomy guy is going to get the same treatment with his bright turquoise eyeball. And last guy, old orange eye, probably the meanest of the bunch. Pardon my focus. Looks like my camera's getting tired of all my rapid hand movements. I'll draw a few crack lines and do some lining of the different details there. Here's a close-up look at what this guy's looking like. And yellow eye. Looking good with that fungal growth on the back. And blue eye shroom cap. Looking pretty good. And orange eye, the mean one, also looking really good. He's got a little fungal growth on him as well. I'm going to mix up a little bit of a wash here. You get to see it firsthand. Equal parts black paint, medium green paint, and coffee bean brown paint. And then I'm going to add about 8 or 10 times as much water to my little cup as I have paint, and I'm going to mix it thoroughly. And I'm going to test it out on that toilet paper there, and I think it's a little thick, so I'm going to add a little more water. And that's looking good. And then I'm going to wash the whole model except for the eyeballs, the bright fungus, and the tentacles. Everything else is going to get washed with this brownish wash and start to look a little bit like a poop emoji. And that's okay because I'm going to dry brush it with a lighter gray afterwards. But this just kind of unifies the color scheme, gives it kind of a rock-like texture, and really allows those brighter pieces in the eyeballs and the fungal extrusions to pop out again. Catch the underside of the mushroom caps and their stems, and the gravel around the base. And orange eyes last. Again, try not to get too much wash on the bright turquoise fungal growths that are popping out there, or the tentacles. And again, I spent all this time on the models, so I want to make sure that I coat them thoroughly with Mod Podge. This is a matte finish Mod Podge, so it's going to make everything a little bit dull. And what I'm going to do after the fact is I'm going to coat the eyeballs on the top of those mushrooms with clear Elmer's Craft Glue. And that glue finishes with a little bit of a glossy, shiny appearance. So it's going to make the ends of the tentacles and the eyeballs and those fungal growths look like they're a little bit moist and a little bit gross. Kind of like life. I'm just slapping it on here. I'm looking for about 90% plus coverage. I'd like to get most of it covered because it definitely adds to the durability of the piece. But if I miss a few cracks or I don't get it all the way back inside the mouth, I'm not going to worry about it because my players are not going to be jamming stuff inside the mouths of these ropers too frequently. And if they do, I'll slap them on the wrist. Sorry for the off-camera work. Still learning. It's a weird habit. I like to work in close to my chest. This guy I'll do for the camera. And just slathering that Mod Podge on. There we go. And here is the finished product sitting on some terrain, rotating around for you to enjoy. All a little bit different. All cool in their own right. Definitely read as a threat. Please join us next Thursday when we launch another video, and I'm going to make some underground terrain nests for scary, gross, unknown monsters from trash, leftovers that I have from a different craft. If you're interested in that, please join us. Thanks again for watching. This is Jeff at Hunt Creative, and we'll catch you next Thursday.